Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada, your host, and I am so glad you're here today. Thanks for tuning in. Ladies, today you're going to meet Dr. Shannon Smith. She is a pediatrician, but she has shifted her focus now to her own company called Own Your Focus. And we are going to be unpacking all kinds of things. Independent voters turning to Trump. We're going to be talking about the gender ideology that's being pushed on our kids and her perspective as a pediatrician. So today's episode is going to be entitled Solving Problems. Be right back. Victory on the battleground. We claim it now. Lady up, lady up. Lady up, lady up. All right, ladies, welcome back. As I mentioned, we're going to be solving problems today. You know, this show is not just about reiterating the obvious or another talking head. We don't need any more of those. What we need are people who have vision for how to fix this, a vision for how to bring valuable insight and valuable, creative, resourceful solutions to our culture. And that is what Dr. Smith is going to give us today in spades. I can't wait for you to meet her. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Shannon Smith. Hey, Dr. Shannon, how are you? I'm just going to call you Dr. Shannon, if that's okay.
That works for you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm
Oh,
excited to be here with you. And thank you for introducing me to your wonderful group of lady listeners.
oh, you are so welcome. It's so good to have you. I've been excited about this show. I mean, okay, how many of us moms right now would love to sit down with a pediatrician and say, what is going on? Like, what is going on? And I mean, there's so many things we're going to talk about today, but do you mind if we kind of start there and just, I think your insight on this is so valuable. You are still, you're not no longer practicing as a pediatrician. You've now moved into this new company. Can you tell us a little bit about that first? And then let's unpack some of this cultural craziness today.
Absolutely. So, first, let me say I love what you said about we're going to be sitting down just having a conversation. And that's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so excited to just dive in and be real because there's so many hard things going
There
on.
are.
I was a pediatrician for almost 20 years. And I really am just going to call myself out. I really thought, Diane, I'm going to go just see healthy, thriving kids. And I was really pumped with this cheesy, naive vision. And that's just not what I saw.
Oh,
Over the past, I saw kids becoming more depressed, more anxious, more overwhelmed, less healthy. And I myself was at the time a mom, a struggling single mom. And I really had to dive in and take a look in the mirror and say, what is going on? And sometimes our obstacles are in front of us to teach us. And that's how I took it. And so I became obsessed with what is going on here and how do we fix it? Not just for my kids, but all of our kids. There is nothing more I wanted. And then I want to see thriving children, healthy families. And so that drives me every day. And I created a company called Own Your Focus because that's what it takes. It's what am I going to focus on? Um, what am I trying to solve? And my company is based on helping people communicate and solve problems more effectively.
I mean, you're the problem solver. We're going to start calling you Dr. Problem Solver. That's what I think we're going to label you today. That's my phrase for you today. You know, you're so right in that there's so much craziness going on. We see so many kids now with, de- I mean, epidemic depression. Almost every young person that I know that in their teens, like in high school, is on some kind of antidepressant. It's like normal, and some of them on several of them. So we see that. And I always ask in Lady Up, it's like, okay, if our culture is evolving, as the progressives like to say, and we are, becoming more acceptive and inclusive and all of these things, then why is the mental health of our young people going in the wrong direction? I mean, I'm going to just say right up front that when you take God out, then all kinds of evil will come in and fill that void, fill that vacuum. But I just see it going in the wrong direction. Our young people more and more depressed. I see so many things declining. The nutrition, like you said, I'm sure with Big Pharma. I mean, they're all over you guys with trying to push, these antidepressants and stuff on these kids. Give us your perspective on what you saw there with the mental health.
Oh, you said it, Diane. Every single child I saw has incredible talent and value. Like there's no doubt. And there was a time in my life where I believed there were good and bad people. I truly don't believe that now. I believe every person has just so much value, but we make good and bad choices.
Right.
And when I would see these children or families even that I would think, oh my gosh, some of these choices, when I was really able to sit down and speak with them, the beauty I would see in them, it just, you feel compelled to be like, how do we get that out of you? And yet that's not what we were seeing. I saw children hating school. Like, wait, what? We've created a system where children hate learning when that's who we are naturally. Or children hate themselves. This
Oh,
beautiful work, whether we want to say God or the universe or speak, we are incredible beings. And to not love that person, to not embrace our faults and our humanity
yeah.
just breaks my heart. And I really think it's so much deeper than I was able to see as a pediatrician.
Mhm.
I had to go out and study business, which now I've been doing for 10 years to go, oh, we are looking at it all wrong. There are root causes that are
Yes.
causing our food, our pharmaceutical, our energy. All these systems are in many ways set up to fail
Yeah.
our family ourselves.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. I want to go back to something you said just a minute ago that I think is so key to point out. We have so many mental health therapists and specialists and all this in schools, and we have kids. So many kids are seeing counselors, and I mean, it's just like I said, it's epidemic. I used to teach in the prison too, and I would see kind of the revolving door of the women. I was taught in the maximum security women's prison, and they would go out. They'd go through these mental health counselors, and they would go through these programs, and then they'd end up back out there in the world, and they'd right back in the recidivism rate, in and out. I think at the core of it, what I've seen just in that, and I'd love to know if that's the same way for the children, it's that unless there is a heart change, no mental health program in the world is going to fix anything. And no drug is going to fix it. It's just like band-aids on things. And that value that you're talking about, them not being able to see their value without understanding that they have a creator. And this body that we get to drive around is like more complex and incredible than any Ferrari or Lamborghini or anything. Taking care of our bodies and that nutrition, things that we put in our bodies and the rest and all these things. But I mean, just the physical aspects, but also that heart aspect of understanding how valuable you are. I don't know how they can understand that without understanding that they were created with love from a God that wants the best for them. I just don't see how any counselor or drug is gonna give them that.
Yeah, it's a foundational piece. It's a foundational piece of understanding you're part of something so much bigger, something so much more powerful. And that is super important to me. And I have found that to be an instrumental piece.
Yeah,
When I give talks and I feel so fortunate to be able to go around, do workshops and talks, and I have to make sure of which words that I'm using to resonate with the largest amount of people. And I try to use for a lot of the crowds, I'm not able to bring in words like God, which is
yeah,
a belief for me, but to bring in even an understanding of all this time that has passed, all these things that have led up to this moment in time for you to be here. And I will see kids' eyes start to light up like, wait a second, our understanding is that every atom that has built this body, this temple, whatever you want to call it, has our current scientific understanding is it came from a star that exploded
yeah.
so many billions of years ago. And like, they're like, wait, I'm a star. And I'm like, that is literally our scientific understanding. And we're not talking about it.
I mean, you being a doctor, you've had lots of classes in anatomy. Would you say as a doctor that you have the whole human body figured out?
Not even close. No one does.
No one does. I mean, it's so intricate. I listen to people like Dr. Ben Carson talk, who was the heart surgeon who separated twins, at birth. I think it was just before birth. I mean, just these and he'll say there's like we know about this much about the body compared to, what's available. Yeah, I mean, it's sad to me that we're in a society where you can't pay reference to the creator, that you have to keep everything so neutral in the medical profession. I have a lot of people in my life that are in the medical field, and I worked in it for years, way back in the early days of my career. And I saw that the just the fine line you have to walk when you're in that world to not, to try to appeal to the masses. And again, I just feel like we're doing such a disservice. I know you're really passionate about the nutrition aspect too. And I want to talk about this because Robert Kennedy, who we know was running as an independent, he was not allowed to run as a Democrat. He ran as an independent, and now he has decided to back Trump. So he's been out there working. And even though there are ideological differences, they do have some common ground when it comes to to making America healthy again. So, talk a little bit, if you will, about the nutrition aspect of this from your doctor perspective and also from your political ideology perspective.
Okay. So, I love this topic. So thank you, Diane, because nutrition is so key to
It
health.
is.
And so I want to start with just in general nutrition. In general nutrition, if someone is out there saying, I'm not sure that nutrition really matters, like, I'm not really speaking to you because I feel like I'm speaking to the people that are like, of course it does. What you put in your mouth gets broken down, degraded, brought into different cells and functioning. Um, because it is critical. And I think arguing the other point, I'd love to hear from somebody off, but breaking down that our nutrition is critical to how our body functions, I think is a foundational piece for me. So
Yeah.
that's one. Next, I'd like for people to understand how little MDs are taught about nutrition.
Mm.
Most medical schools have 0 to about 7 hours max of nutrition the entire
Really?
time. We're going to
Really?
get into yes.
You are
Yes.
kidding me. So, is it more just about big pharma, about the drugs you can prescribe?
Oh, so when you look at who pays for our medical schools, and people get so upset with money. I hear people, women specifically, be like, money is evil. Money is not evil.
Right.
Money is a tool.
Right.
And when we use that tool correctly, when we quit hating and instead we get curious, we can find out that our money can tell us so much. And when we owes money and we say, okay, it makes sense. Who's paying for medical
Hmm.
schools? Who's paying for these hospitals? Who are the lobbyists that are donating to these causes? Things start to make sense and we can quit being angry. And instead, we can say, no, that's not what we're going to do with our time and our money. That's not what we're going to vote for. So, who is paying for medical school tends to be pharmaceutical companies and other organizations that can profit. Our economic system, which I was missing, is based on companies that are beholden to their shareholders. That's how it's set up. It's called fiduciary duty.
Hmm.
So I'm going to kind of jump over for a minute, but during COVID is when during the COVID pandemic is when I really started to understand how money played out in medicine. And my husband, has taught me so much. He's run his own company, a large company, has made a big impact in the world. I'm grateful. He is not only my husband and my best friend, he's my mentor. Um, and he has helped me to understand business without all this emotion that almost makes me blind to
Yeah.
it. So, for example, during COVID, I my job in the family was to look into what treatments are available and what I felt about the vaccine and things like that. And my bedroom was covered in research articles, and I'm going through. And when I started to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm really questioning the cost benefit ratio of some of these things," I looked at my husband and I said, there's no way. There's no way that people would actively choose to do harm to others. And he looked at me and said, Shannon, I don't understand what you don't understand about business.
Oh,
It like almost felt like a slap. Yeah.
wow.
He was like that, their job, where do you see incentives to promote holistic health for humanity or the planet? And when you look, they're not there. And we can either be angry and be like, that person's a bad person, or we can say, actually, our current society says they have one job to make sure their fiduciary duty is met to their shareholders at any cost. And that's the cost we're currently paying in the pharmaceutical, in the food, in our electric, when in reality, I believe that the solutions are out there for us all to thrive and be connected and just live our humanity. But our current system isn't set up in a way to incentivize holistic health.
Wow. That that's a lot what you just said, and it makes so much sense. Um, and you just look at even who's paying for a lot of the cultural movies and television shows and things like that, when I watch, I watch very little mainstream television anymore. I just can't stomach most of it. But when I do watch a show, like I like The Voice, for instance, and every time I'm watching a show like that, it seems like commercial after commercial after commercial is some other pharmaceutical drug, and it just it's not funny, but it just cracks me up how it has, like, these children playing and these butterflies going by and, like, this voice going, "Could cause death." It's like, "Are you kidding me?" And we've just become so accustomed to hearing these, and more and more people are getting on them. Like, when it comes to the nutrition thing, I know there's been a lot of talk out there recently about this Ozempic, I think it was, and I just know the "Oh, oh, oh, Ozempic." I know the little, theme song they have for it, but that's all I know about it. But I knew that it was some kind of a weight loss thing, but now there's some big class action lawsuit so it's almost like they will roll the dice, it seems like, and pump these drugs out that cause so much harm, and then and just kind of absorb the class action settlements that are gonna come as a result, because I guess they're making so much money on all the people who are not filing that I don't know if it's worth it, but they are funding our culture. So they're funding, you're saying, medical schools and a lot of the special interest groups that get profit from big pharma and from these medical professions. And then we're seeing it in culture. We're seeing it television shows. All this. It is no wonder. I mean, there's some people that I know that are in holistic medicine, and they all say that doctors don't. How do they put it? Something like doctors don't treat health, they treat the sick, or they're trying to make you sick, not
Yeah.
healthy, something like that.
It's sick care, not
Sick
healthcare.
care, yeah.
It's truly, yeah. You can't monetize health with our current system. And that is such a problem. But if we change the incentives, we could. And it's not that far out of reach. The companies are just playing by the playbook. You described how a company puts out a drug and they already plan to get sued. Like that's
Well,
part
they
of
just
their
know it,
plan.
they just accept it, yeah.
And if I'm going to speak from a business with no other moral compass, if I can make 100 billion off of a drug and I'm going to get sued for 1 billion, that's fine. It makes
Wow,
sense. I'm
wow.
going to do it.
Oh,
And that's what's happening. You look at the Sackler family with opioids.
yeah.
I practiced in Huntington, West Virginia. It was the heroin overdose capital of the US.
Oh,
So while I was a pediatrician, I saw families decimated.
hmm.
Almost 3 out of 4 children in West Virginia are not being raised by their parents.
What?
And it's, yes. And this should be being screamed from the
3
rooftops.
out of 4 children?
It is it's between 2 out of 4 and 3 out of 4 children are
Oh
not.
my gosh, Shannon.
Yes.
Oh,
And I do believe it takes a village. Okay. I don't think it should just be, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm
yeah.
referring to parents being addicted. And for years, I was part of the medical group that saw these drug reps come in. They introduced the pain scale 1 to 10 with the smiley face, a 10 with the sad face, not knowing that this was actually a pharmaceutical group purposely implementing this vital of pain to say pain's not normal. Don't listen to your body. Numb that and buy our product. And I was part of that group that heard treat pain, treat pain, treat pain. And at that time, as a young medical student, I didn't understand. I didn't know how to say, who's paying for this? What are we doing here? Or let's jump back to your news. One of my good friends is, her name's Sherry. She's an elderly woman. I love her. And I go over and I hang out at her house sometimes. And she has mainstream media playing. And like you, I see drug
I
commercial.
mean,
And yeah, it's almost comical, but then somebody can watch the news and say, "Oh, but they're not influenced by that."
yeah,
Instead of saying, "No, those commercials are awesome because they tell you who is purchasing the programming,
yes,
the news, everything on there." And that if we understand that playbook, quit calling them bad, that they're just playing by their playbook
yeah,
and anything that comes out against them, they have the same type of playbook to discredit, put down, and pull their points apart. And most of us, especially like early med students, like I was, didn't know how to look at a study and say, wait a second. All you did was dilute the drug and now say, hey, look, our study that's much bigger than yours because we have $1 trillion isn't valid. And this is what's being pushed on our children, on our families, from the information to the food to the medication.
Ugh.
And we can either sit by quietly or like I'm doing today, it's my first political podcast ever. And so thank you.
Being brave.
It's being brave, and this did take some serious bravery. My kids cheered me on before I came on, but I can either sit back or I can say, "This is what's happening, and this is what I wish I would have known," so I like to say we vote with our time and our money.
Yeah.
So the food I choose to give my family, what my family and I watch, what we do with our time, that is one way we vote.
Yeah. 100% agree. We're at a point in our country now where we really just can't ride the fence anymore. You're either on the side of good or you're on the side of evil. And what's being pushed on our children when it comes to the drugs we're talking about, when it comes to their mental health, when it comes to this gender ideology stuff, all this, which I want to get into that in just a second too. And I can already tell y'all listening that we're going to go over a little over 30 minutes today. So let's just settle in. We're going to, hopefully not much, but we're going to go a little over today because we're going to talk to Shannon. We're going to pick her brain as much as we can today. But when we look at all this stuff that's going on, that's being pushed on our kids, it is evil. There's no other word for it. It is evil. And we look back over, we talk about a lot on this show. We look back over the centuries and it's not new. There's nothing new under the sun. This is Satan's playbook in every generation, in every major empire. It always goes the same direction. It always, you can almost just map it out when you look at old empires like the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire. It's the same playbook. So it's happening here with us, maybe a little more sophisticated because of the access we have to the technology and the drugs and all that we have now, but still the same playbook. So you're either on the side of good or you're on the side of evil. We can't ride that fence anymore. And so it is. I mean, and I had to get over it 4 years ago when I ran for office because I want to tell you, it cost me so much, cost me relationships. I understand now that speaking up costs you. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost you something today, Shannon. And that's why I say I commend you for being brave because you're going to pay for it. I'm just telling you, you're going to pay for it. But
And what's it cost me to be
well,
quiet is the big
exactly.
and
Exactly.
that's big expense and
Yeah.
way more than I'm willing to pay.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Let's unpack this gender stuff for just a minute because I know that's
Okay.
on a lot of these moms' minds that are listening today. They are being told that if they don't go along with this idea, like, okay, so their precious children get on the little yellow school bus, go to school, then the teachers or whoever's there is influencing them with curriculum, with a lot of this curriculum that hides under these, very safe kind of names, wit and wisdom, and a lot of these things they're being introduced to books and into projects and into classroom activities and things like that that are suggesting planting little seeds in their little minds that are you sure you're a boy? Are you sure you're a girl? And exploiting the confusion that kids already have when they're growing up and that idea of becoming something like they're in this evolution process, not evolution, but you know what I mean, they're evolving into their stages of childhood and they're being planted, these seeds are being planted in their minds. And now the parents are being told that if they don't go along with this kid's self-identification that they are really a boy and not a girl, that it's first of all, it's violence. They're being told it's violent or that it's, at the very least, child abuse. They can have their children taken away, or they're told that their child will commit suicide if they don't affirm it. And these parents are like, I mean, I'm seeing it happen in other states where these children are being taken away from their parents. We know this is straight up Marxism. That's what has to happen. The kids belong to the state eventually. And we're seeing it. We're one election away from Marxism. We are so close. We've never been this close. We can taste it in our country. But, and we will get to the solutions here in a minute. I promise everybody. But I just want to ask you, Shannon, from your perspective, what what's your opinion about that? Again, being a pediatrician, seeing these children, I'm sure, going through these confusing conversations. What's a parent to do?
Okay. I'm gonna start with a story from Elon Musk. I'm not have you heard much of his story
No.
about his child, his oldest child? So Elon's oldest child went through what you just described. questioning. I'm sure was faced with people around discussing these things. And Elon was faced with a group of physicians who said, essentially, this is child abuse. Your child could kill himself if you don't allow this. And he allowed it. And he is coming out saying, rest of his life will be dedicated to making sure that this doesn't happen to another family. He said it was
Wow, I didn't know that.
absolutely that he believed them, and he and I very much I'm a big Elon solving problems fan.
Me
I
too.
like the way Elon thinks. It does not mean I think I like every decision. I think we don't need to. I like how he approaches problems.
Yeah,
And yet to hear that Elon felt pressured and made that decision, and as he says, he lost his oldest child
Mm,
because
mhm.
there's many options are now gone from that child.
Yeah,
So you and I spoke briefly about this before. I think it's normal for a child to question their sexuality, who they are. These are all parts of growing and becoming. They're beautiful.
yeah,
I think influencing them to believe that they should be somebody else,
yeah,
or they need to be somebody else, or in any way make permanent changes before the front part of their brain is developed. That's called your neocortex. It's the part of the brain that helps you to make decisions into the future, to be like, hey, this is going to happen when this happens. It doesn't develop until around 26 to 28. And
mhm.
so we are telling kids you're not mature enough to even have alcohol until 21. And yet we are putting pressure on parents that they should allow their children to make permanent sexual changes. Truly, I think it's criminal. And if you look into it deeper, I think who is ultimately pushing this are organizations that are making money from these type of surgeries
You
and
do.
medication.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too, is that's kind of the motivation behind it is always the money. It's like, follow the money. Oh my god.
Eh, I'm a and I want to impress upon people that that is a good thing. The more we follow the money, the more it's like, "Hey, we get to see we see you doing it. We're not buying it. We see that you put up an organization." It's just like the Sackler family with the opioid crisis. What did they do? It's the same playbook. They make a separate organization. I can't remember what the name was, but it was like some cheesy, like Americans for Pain-Free Existence. It's something like that. And they just take in, they funnel money for that cause of, hey, we're going to promote this drug, these medications. And the more transparent money we have, the more exciting this is because then we can incentivize people to be like, hey, you can see that. And our current money supply allows that to an extent, but not completely.
Well, that's a great segue to our next little area when we talk about solutions. And it may all come back down to this unless you have a few more that you would like to add. But I actually met you at Bitcoin, the big conference here in Nashville. And you and I just hit it off. We had a great conversation, and you were helping me learn more about Bitcoin. It's kind of a foreign concept to me. It's Greek to me right now. I'm still learning. But I was surprised because Trump came and spoke at that event. Our Senator Marsha Blackburn was there. Vivek Ramaswamy was there. We had so many people that were there. They thought Elon was coming. I know that was kind of a big rumor, which didn't end up materializing. But when just listening to you and some of the other women talk about Bitcoin, I actually became very intrigued. And it's been around. Tell us a little bit about it, like in the very elementary way, that we can
Okay.
understand.
Okay.
Like, what is it, and how can that be a solution?
Okay, I was so I thank you, and I'm so grateful I got to meet you there. And I would love in the notes for the podcast to share the documentary "God Bless Bitcoin."
Yes,
Okay,
yes. Mhm.
it's a really good one. Okay, so as my shirt, "Fix the money, fix the world." Um, okay, I as a doctor, I did not understand money at all. So, I told Diane this already that when I was dating on my spreadsheet of the list while I was trying to find my life partner, my best friend was someone that understood money. And my husband, Steven, really gets money. And one of the things he told me is he said, Shannon, money is ones and zeros in a computer. That's all it
Mhm.
is. And I was like, what? And that is it. It's an accounting system to help us understand value exchange. Our current people all the time are like, oh, things are getting more expensive. They're not. Our money's becoming worth less.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And understanding that it's happening, our government is printing $1 trillion every 90 days. And that number is so large, it's hard to comprehend. If you tried to count to a trillion, it would take you 32,000 years. Okay.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it hurts. And
Wow.
so expanding our money supply in this way is a cliff we're just headed toward.
Yeah.
And this is our children's future. And that's why I'm on here. That's why I'm talking about this, because the solutions are out there and we get to. One of those keys is getting control of our money supply. And so Bitcoin, our US dollar, is ones and zeros that you can't completely follow. Like no one knows how much has ever been put out there. Like to me, that's kind of wild. It's what? So it's an accounting system that no one's really fully able to keep track of.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is ones and zeros that are in a system. It's a technological tool that has the most up to date security known, called the blockchain, that's used in other areas. But it has a limited supply that allows us to follow, track movement of money while keeping the user anonymous. That is Bitcoin.
Wow. It tracks money without while keeping the user anonymous. I think a
Correct.
lot of people are very worried about being tracked. Everything that they're doing right now is being tracked. And you spent very few of us carry cash anymore. I'll go and valet park somewhere, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything for a tip. And there, a lot of them are doing the Cash App and stuff now, but we just don't carry money anymore. So many of us, we're kind of becoming accustomed to this tap now and pay. We're not even inserting it anymore. And I think they're working us up to the chip, like to the human chip, which we've seen Bill Gates and a lot of these people talking about that. But what's correlating between that and the end times biblical prophecy is that if you don't go along with the narrative and you're in, traditional currency, whatever that is, if it's a chip or whatever, if you don't go along with the narrative, they'll just shut down your ability to buy or sell,
Yes.
and that's terrifying, for a
Yes.
lot of people. So Bitcoin is kind of a way they can't do that.
Correct. Our current monetary supply is centralized, meaning there's a central bank. That did not happen until the early 1900s. Before that, it was decentralized, so you wouldn't have been able to do that. Having a centralized banking system has caused so many problems, from being one of the main causes of how many wars we have going on at any different time. And there's way more than most people realize, to creating this massive debt we're facing. Bitcoin, no, there's no one behind it. The part of the brilliance of the tool is there is no single person, no single entity that's in charge. Nobody can cut you off.
Really?
And that is amazing. Yes, that is part of the brilliance of this. So just like in Canada, when the truckers went on strike and people shut their bank accounts down for having freedom,
Yeah.
freedom of speech, which is critical. I like to tell people I'm not voting for Trump. I am voting for freedom of
Right.
speech. And that happens to be there. We have to have freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment guarantees that. So having the second guarantees that
Yeah.
first. So being able to speak up without having our money cut off, which is just another freedom of speech,
Yeah.
is money movement.
Yeah.
Discussing value is critical. And that's where Bitcoin comes in, to give people back power, the individual, so that our true being can shine.
And this then cuts off with that growing then. And one thing that you had said that I thought was really important to kind of reshare is that it's growing faster than our government can keep up. They hate it. Apparently, it's like a virus of its own that's kind of growing, and it's outgrowing a lot of the laws and stuff that we have on the books now. Um, but the idea that we were talking about earlier, that we can then cut off the money supply to big pharma, and maybe that's what you're saying is the solution. If we move into that direction, then it kind of severs you know the shot in the arm that big pharma and all that stuff's getting all the time. Like all of this traditional means of them paying for all of this stuff that's influencing our culture so much and influencing our kids. If we can basically bankrupt them, then it takes away that power.
Right now, our government is funneling money to these pharmaceutical companies through our vaccine programs,
Yeah.
through numerous Medicare, Medicaid. It is absolutely feeding these, and I do believe deeply at the heart we're saying we think it's good, like, hey, we think we're doing what's in the best interest.
Yeah.
But when you dive in and realize who's policing these companies, are usually these companies themselves, you realize, wait, how are we trusting the research? Blockchain technology helps create trust. We don't have trust in our society,
Right.
and we think we do, and that's causing so many problems because things can't be followed back. Wait, who shared that information? Where did that come from? And that underlying blockchain I briefly spoke about allows you to follow. Because I think today we can get on the news and we're like, how do I even know if something's true?
Yeah.
And that was such a big problem. And that's why it's up to us to be like, what are we handing our children? I can be quiet, I can shut down, or I can start to say, wait, my children matter.
Yeah.
What my children, your children think and feel matters.
Yeah.
And I can either let them inherit this diluted down society that our grandparents fought so much for. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War I and World War II, including losing limbs. We can either sit back and start saying, hey, it's not okay to talk about these things in polite society. It's not okay to post about them. I just want to be liked. Or we can say, our children's health, our children's voices matter, and we can speak up as mothers.
Yeah, 100%. And that goes for people like me with adult children too. It's going to be hard one way or the other. It's hard to take a stand and it's hard to risk losing relationship. I've lost relationship currently with my adult son because he's so on the other side. He's married to a nurse practitioner. They were all about the vaccines. They're all about I mean their ideology could not be further from mine, and when I ran for office, all of that surfaced. We didn't know that we were so far apart, and it cost me relationship with him. He's just, you know, backed out of my life, and it's very, very painful. But I had the
Sorry to
choice.
hear that.
Thank you. I had the choice to take the stand that I knew was right, and to stand for what I believed, and it cost me him. It cost me, and they got married, I was not invited to the wedding. They've had my first granddaughter. She's almost 2, and I've yet to meet her. I mean, it is the most painful, painful thing, but I am praying every day, and I am believing for restoration, and I'm hopeful for that. We've kinda started planting seeds toward restoration. And again, I'm hopeful for that. But his relationship with God and my relationship with God and standing for what is right is more important than being accepted or liked or invited to Thanksgiving dinner. We have to do that. So it's going to be really hard to take a stand. And believe me, firsthand, I know what hard looks like in order to do that. Or it's hard to sit back and say nothing and watch our country go further and further down the tubes. I mean, into these all these things we're talking about today, into the clutches of Marxism, into our children becoming wards of the state and us losing all power with our children. We have to pick our hard at this point. So are you going to choose the hard on taking a stand, or are you going to choose the hard on literally losing everything that, like you said, our founding fathers and all of our veterans and all fought so hard to give us? We have to make a choice at this point. And I choose the side of right no matter what it costs. And that is where you're at today, which I commend you for doing that. And hopefully the people that are listening right now, I hope you will do that because it it is no longer option. We don't have the option anymore to ride the fence. Like I said earlier, we just don't have it. I love this idea of Bitcoin. It still freaks me out a little bit, Shannon. I'm not gonna lie. I'm still a little like, okay, I need just more information. I think our brains tend to reject anything that's new. And so we think that's something we'll think about later, but it sounds like we need to be thinking about it more now than ever.
If whatever money you have sitting in your savings, know that it's just being chipped away by that trillion being printed. Every 90 days, it's increasing. And so, how do you save? And it's through assets. And Bitcoin is such a unique tool because it's an asset and a currency. So, as well as it is one of the greatest inventions of our time. And there's like a white paper, like any other invention. We can have a whole session on that. But to know that it's our job to secure those assets, but sitting in the bank in cash is a way that it is just being pulled away. And what is money? It is our work over time. So our work over time is being stolen from us.
We could probably do a whole other show just on Bitcoin, I think. Wow.
True.
You've given us so much food for thought today. I think you've really validated a lot of the um, skepticism that we've had. you've certainly given us from the pediatric perspective, so much validation on knowing that a lot of these things that are being pushed on our kids are so wrong. You've given us so much to think about when it comes to solutions. I mean, your voice today has been very valuable, and I really thank you for coming on and joining me today. You're welcome back anytime you want to come.
Well, thank you. And I hope people are inspired to have these awkward conversations with others with curiosity, because not speaking about them is not speaking up for our families. So thank you for putting this out there. And thank you for having the hard, awkward conversations for the betterment of all.
My pleasure. You're so welcome. All right, Shannon, thanks again. And ladies, I just want to thank you for tuning in today. I want to leave you with this one thing. We talk a lot in Lady Up America about how to have these really hard conversations. And when Dr. Shannon just said that, it reminded me of a lingering question that you can pose. We go through our steps in my book about housekeeping, how we've got to clean up our own house, be walking out the fruit of the spirit, and we go into um, you know, a whole teaching around that. And then we go to our second step, which is entertaining, where we've got to lean in and really try to understand where the other person's coming from. And we have steps to go through for that. But then the third step is where we have our gardening. And that's where we are then teaching. We're actually not really teaching. What we're doing is we're influencing people by getting them to question their own beliefs, not argue with ours. So, one lingering question that comes to my mind that we can plant in someone's mind around, let's just say the gender stuff, that we were just talking about. You know, one of the questions I have is, if a doctor, let's say if Dr. Shannon as a pediatrician misdiagnoses one of her patients, she's got malpractice insurance in place and things like that to kind of protect her from that malpractice, or that misdiagnosis. So, here's where I get lost. If a child misdiagnoses themselves, what's the remedy for that? So these are just things, and then as you leave it, as you drop that question, remember in that 2 to 5 second window where the person is just kind of stunned because they've never thought about it like that, that's where you say, "Okay, well, it's been great seeing you. I've got to run, but we're not going to solve all this today, but let's talk about it again when I see you." And then out you go, right? Elvis has left the building, and you leave room then for that conversation to be picked up the next time you see them. So these tactics are for people that you see over and over again, where you can plant these important seeds and move the needle in people's hearts. But there are a lot of them. You can get my Lady Up America book, go through the virtual book club online, and we've got a whole catalog of them in there around all of these different cultural issues that we're dealing with. But this is what has to happen. We need to be informed. We need to understand and be, I guess, validated from people who are experts in this field. And then we need to understand how to approach these really hard conversations in a way that's effective and actually wins people to our values. And that's what we're all about here. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. And remember, Lady Up.